Good morning, everyone. How are you today on this last day of NDC? Welcome to Transformers, the rise of ChatGPT. I'm Kesha Williams, and I am super excited to be here with you. Now, before we start, I have to say, no copyright infringement intended. All rights to the Transformers movie belong to Paramount Pictures.
We've kept much from you, Sam,
This isn't my war.
but I fear it soon will be. Autobots, protect the key!
Megatron wants what's in my mind.
Optimus! You fought bravely, but this world is already mine. Then die! Here we are. Fight us now. Why, Sentinel, why? For Cybertron, for our home! Come here, boy. You turned your back on Cybertron. Now you will watch her die. Did you think you could hide?
If you're not familiar with the Transformers movie franchise, now you are. So, who here is familiar with Transformers? Okay, good. Most of you. Who here loves Transformers as much as I do? Only a few people? I am a huge science fiction fan. I have watched this film series multiple times. And only a few I have shown on the screen, but there's the Transformers, there's Revenge of the Fallen, Dark of the Moon, Age of Extinction, The Last Night, which was actually filmed a lot here in London, and then the more recent Transformers, Rise of the Beast. And that is what inspired this talk. So instead of Rise of the Beast, we have the rise of ChatGPT. So who is your favorite Transformer? Optimus Prime? Bumblebee? Or are you on the side of the Decepticons and you love Megatron? For me, I'm definitely on the side of the good guys, the Autobots, and it is a toss-up between Bumblebee and Optimus Prime. But at the end of the day, Bumblebee wins my heart. He is a fierce protector of humans, and he's very down to earth, and not to mention he's a scout and a spy for the Autobots. In the world of artificial intelligence, a force has literally revolutionized the way that we interact and communicate with machines. Transformers. And no, not the shape-shifting robots that I just showed you, but the transformer architecture pattern. So I have a prize. This is a little Optimus Prime that actually transforms. I have a prize for the very first person, I saw your hand first, that can answer this question. What does the GPT stand for in ChatGPT?
Generative pre-trained text. Will transform.
Okay, yes, generative pre-trained transformer. So I'll put this here for you. You can get it after the talk. Oh.
Come back to Australia.
And like she said, it's called Generative Pre-trained Transformer, GPT, and it is a model built using the transformer architecture. And it represents a significant advancement in the field of artificial intelligence, especially natural language processing. So our time together today will be spent understanding the transformer architecture and dissecting how it actually powers ChatGPT. We'll look at the origins and evolution of GPT and the transformer architecture. We will have a ChatGPT deep dive where we dissect that architecture. We will look at ChatGPT in the real world. So we'll have demos and use cases. And then for more than meets the eye, we'll talk about limitations, ethical risk, and bias when dealing with large language models. We'll look at commanding the power through something called prompt engineering. And at the end, when the autobots roll out, we'll talk about the future of Gen AI and your next steps for continuing your learning journey. So let's start with the origins and evolution. If you're familiar, and most of you are familiar with the Transformers movie series, you know the story about this guy shown here, Bumblebee. He actually lost his ability to speak and uses snippets from the radio to communicate with humans and other autobots. And when you think about it, it's all about communication, how we communicate. It's the most fundamental way that we interact with each other. How do we interact with machines, though? It starts with this field of natural language processing. For the longest time, humans have wanted to communicate with machines in the same manner that we communicate with each other, using natural language. But newsflash, all of us in this room know that machines only understand numbers. And so the field of natural language processing is a branch of AI that helps machines understand or really process human language. It combines a lot of math, linguistics, statistics, deep learning, machine learning to make it all possible. All right, I have another prize. Let's see. This guy here, I think this is Starscream, but he transforms into a fighter jet. So, can you think of an example where natural language processing impacts your daily life? First person wins Starscream. Yes. See, that was easy. Here is Starscream. Oh, he's going. So if you use voice-operated GPS, digital assistants, Siri, Alexa, speech dictation software, or even customer service chatbots, you're interacting with natural language processing. But up until now, they've all lacked this human feel. Do you remember the awe you felt the very first time you saw Optimus Prime transform? I do.
Optimus Prime, your world, sky.
If you all remember, his shape-shifting ability was controlled by a little cube that can actually turn into a much bigger cube called the Allspark. Just like how the Allspark breathes life into the machines, Gen AI models created using the transformer architecture breathed new life into natural language processing. You can say the AllSpark is to Optimus Prime what the transformer architecture is to ChatGPT. It's the core technology that brings it to life, at least in the sense of understanding and processing and coherently generating language. Now, I have to say this, ChatGPT is not really alive, okay? I don't want to start any rumors that Kesha said ChatGPT is sentient. Not yet. So what is Gen AI? I'm sure many of you have heard of Gen AI, and ChatGPT falls underneath Gen AI. It creates new content, ideas, videos, music, stories, and it is just amazing how you can co-create with a tool like ChatGPT. And it's powered by large foundation models, FMs, that are trained on vast amounts of data. Whenever I explain it, I just tell people, just think that ChatGPT was trained on the entire internet. So vast amounts of data. But where does Gen AI fit in this AI landscape? So at the highest level, you have AI. And AI is all about simulating, having a machine simulate human intelligence. Underneath AI, there is machine learning. And that is where machines study data, finding trends and patterns, and storing those trends and patterns in a model that can then be integrated into systems to add intelligence. Underneath machine learning, there's something called deep learning. And deep learning uses artificial neural networks modeled after the human brain to learn. And underneath deep learning, we have Gen AI. And it's powered by large language models trained on large amounts of data. And it can handle multiple use cases. That's the amazing part of it. Okay, I have another prize. This one is a helicopter. I don't know what his name is, but he transforms into a helicopter. So this should be really easy if you were paying attention. What's the name of the foundation model that powers ChatGPT? Who knows? I saw your hand first in the green. Yeah, easy. Got the helicopter. I'll put it on the table. Yes, GPT, that was easy. I'm running out of prizes. Okay, so what's the significance of a foundation model? And like I was saying before, what's really amazing about a foundation model is that it can actually replace multiple traditional machine learning models. So in the past, we needed one traditional model for text generation, one to summarize documents, one for information extraction, a different one to translate language, a different one to generate a new image. But one foundation model can actually do it all. And like we just learned, GPT is a foundation model. So now I'd like to demo the power of ChatGPT. So in this example, I am uploading an image. And I'm going to ask ChatGPT to identify that image. Okay. I'm having technical difficulties. Let's try it again. Okay. I'm having technical difficulties, so let's just Pretend that it's working. So let's see, will it let me? Okay. So what I'm doing, I'm uploading a picture of this dog. Such a cute little dog. And I'm going to ask ChatGPT, can you identify this dog? And ChatGPT is thinking as I'm manually advancing the demo. Okay, so ChatGPT says, it appears to be this popular Japanese breed with a fox-like appearance. So that's the first use case, image recognition and image identification. And so now I learned that it is a Japanese dog. I am asking ChatGPT, how do I say hello in Japanese? And let's see the response. Okay, it's thinking. Okay, all right, so I skipped past it. So there we go. And so now it says, it shows it and then it says konnichiwa. So that's the second use case of language generation and translation. And then the very last part, if it will go, okay, yes. And so now I'm asking ChatGPT to, one, go to this website in real time, review it and summarize it for me and tell me how to take care of that breed of dog. And so ChatGPT comes back and says, grooming is essential, tells me about the diet, and really tells me how to care for that animal. And so we see one foundation model applies in multiple use cases. Okay. And so the way it works, first there's this pre-training process for the foundation model, where it is pre-trained on a large corpus of data, unlabeled data. And then that one foundation model can be applied for multiple use cases, like text generation, document summary, which we saw, information extraction, QA, and chatbot. So that is how it's trained. There is also an optional portion, and that's this adapting and fine-tuning. And that is the true power of a large language model. So ChatGPT is a fine-tuned version of GPT, and it's fine-tuned for conversational engagement. Okay, so I keep talking about the transformer architecture, and how powerful it is. And I'm sure some of you may be thinking, well, Kesha, there are other ways or other techniques to create Gen AI systems. What about GANs? Who's heard of GANs? General Adversarial Networks. And what about variational autoencoders? Yes, those are ways that or techniques that you can use for Gen AI, but they do have a few shortcomings, especially around content generation and creativity. Now, the transformer architecture, I think we can all agree that it was really life-changing because it made ChatGPT possible. And ChatGPT actually took AI mainstream overnight. And so when we think about the transformer architecture, there are three components. First, there's the input processing, then understanding the context, and then the generation portion of it, which is the real beauty of it. So let's start with input processing. And we'll take this very simple use case of translating good morning into Portuguese. And a side note, I visited Portugal at the end of last year and fell in love with the country. So in all of my talks and everything that I do, I try to figure out a way to integrate Portugal. and Portuguese. So we'll take this very simple use case of translating good morning into Portuguese. So the starting point, you have your prompt. That's the instruction to the model. Translate this. And the first step, the model will tokenize your input. If you've worked with the OpenAI API, you understand that you're charged based on the amount of tokens. So tokens in and tokens out. And you can think of a token simply as just a part of a word. So in our example, let's say good and morning are 2 tokens. The next step will be to translate those tokens into the numeric representation. Like we said, machines don't understand text, so we have to put our text in a format the machine can understand. And so an embedding is a vector representation of that text. So once we have the embeddings, we come over to this understanding the context and starting this decoding process. And the first step is something called self-attention. And this really helps the model understand the context of the input. So how does good relate to morning, and how does each word influence the meaning of what it is you're trying to convey? Next, after self-attention, you have this auto-regressive processing. And this is where the model processes the input token one at a time and attempts to predict the next token. So not the next word, but the next token based on what it's seen so far. And at this point, it's trying to consider, what does good morning mean? And then we go over to the generation piece, the language generation. And so here it's starting the output and it's predicting the first token. And in this case, it would be BOM, B-O-M. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And then it continues this auto-regressive processing, and it predicts the next token based on the full input, good morning, and what it has already predicted, BOM. And so, likely, the next word would be dia. It comes to the end of the sentence, and it returns BOM dia. And like I said, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And so with the transformer architecture, there's just this ability to learn from vast amounts of data and really capture the context, the positional encoding, how words relate to each other in order to perform. So now let's have a deep dive on ChatGPT. Just as transformers evolve, so to speak, they transform from a machine to a vehicle and back to a machine, there were several transformations or evolutions on our journey to get to the ChatGPT that we know today. The evolution of these models began in only 2018, not that long ago, when the transformer architecture was released. Shortly thereafter, GPT-1 was released, and it had 117 million parameters. And that sounds like a huge number. Parameters are basically the number of trainable variables or weights. And the more parameters you have, the wider range of language use cases and contexts you can perform. And of course, the more you have, the more computational power you need. So GPT-1, 2018, it had the ability to generate text, summarize text, and translate language. Then in 2019, GPT-2 came on the scene. It could do the same thing as GPT-1, but it added on the ability to perform Q&A. And this one actually had 1.5 billion parameters, and it was trained on a larger and more diverse data set. 2020, not that long ago, GPT-3 came on the scene, and it could do everything that GPT-2 could do, but it also added on code generation and creative writing. And GPT-3 had 175 billion parameters. And then in 2022, GPT 3.5, what we know today as ChatGPT, was released. It could do the same things as GPT-3, same amount of parameters. But what made ChatGPT stand out was that it was a fine-tuned version, fine-tuned for conversational context. And lastly, just last year, GPT-4 came out, could do the same things as 3.5, but it added this multimodal ability. So now it can process images, documents. And I wonder what's next. When we think about GPT-5, I can't even imagine what it's going to be able to do. So let's talk more about this evolution. I mentioned to you that ChatGPT is a fine-tuned version of GPT, so it is a variant meant to understand and process conversations. So who in here has played around with ChatGPT? And I'm expecting everybody to raise your hands. Yes, if you have not played around with ChatGPT, you are definitely missing out. Who in here has been fooled by ChatGPT? I think much more of you have been fooled, you just don't know. You trust it way too much. So ChatGPT, when you hold a conversation, it is very, 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 very convincing. And it can hold a back and forth, a multi-turn dialogue conversation with ease. And it even manages the tone and style, and it makes you feel like you're talking to a real person. I've mentioned the term fine-tuning multiple times. Basically what that is, it's making GPT really good at a specific task by giving it focused training. And so that's how we have ChatGPT. And when we think about the data set for that fine-tuning process of ChatGPT, imagine human trainers providing conversation examples. So dialogues, question and answer pairs, and really a few million examples provided to ChatGPT. Examples of desired behavior and guidelines with how to respond in a different context. And that process that I just described is called reinforcement learning from human feedback. And as the model generates responses during this training process, the human trainers provide feedback. And it really elevates, as we can all see, the performance of ChatGPT. Lastly, you have this inference and interaction. So the true power of ChatGPT, it leverages its pre-training knowledge from GPT. So knowledge of world events, grammar, language, and it combines it with its fine-tuned knowledge on conversational context, and it just can generate human-like responses in a wide variety of scenarios. And every day that I interact with ChatGPT, I'm more and more amazed. So now let's talk about a few real-world use cases. So the business that I'm in the consulting business. And at this stage, there are a lot of organizations, of course, that have heard about Gen AI, heard about AI, but they really don't understand how to leverage it and apply it to their business. So one popular use case that I've seen is around virtual assistants. So chatbots in customer service, having a large language model answer customer questions, support tickets, and provide responses. Another use case is dynamic content personalization. And so this is basically content generation. And this is how I've used ChatGPT really on a day-to-day basis to help write agendas, help write outlines. It wrote this entire talk. No, I'm joking. But it helps with me drafting blog posts, reports, and I'm even using it to write a science fiction book. So stay tuned. You see a science fiction book turned into a big movie on the big screen by Kesha Williams. Another popular use case that I've seen organizations start to use is the code assistance piece, using ChatGPT or a large language model to write code, explain code, optimize code. I taught a 2-day workshop earlier this week, and I just remember having the conversation about code reviews, and it's to the point like, well, back in the day, back in my day, when I had to do code reviews and actually manually review the code from developers. Now you can just send that code to ChatGPT and it optimizes it. It tells you what can be improved, what's wrong. And when I think about the role of a developer 5 years from now, I think it's going to be different from what we see today. So code assistance, another really big use case. Summarization, just summarizing long documents. So a lot of organizations want to be able to load all of their document history, manuals, publications, and then have their employees do what I call chat with your data. I've seen a lot of use cases in that space. Now, this one I haven't seen as much, but I think it can be a game changer, and that is interactive storytelling. So imagine a video game that responds to each player uniquely based on that person, the choices they're making in the game, and each person has this unique gaming experience. Sounds really cool, and it's doable. Language translation, of course, we've seen that. But on top of language translation, ChatGPT can also localize dialect to a particular culture. It can adjust tone. That was another demo that we worked on in my workshop where you have a text that's 90s slang and ChatGPT can change the tone to be more professional. Data interpretation, reading Excel documents, generating charts and graphs, and then lastly, image generation. So generating an image from text. Okay, I want everyone to close your eyes and imagine what this will look like. A beach in London. I've always wanted to see a beach in London. Don't open your eyes yet. Okay, open your eyes. Look at this beach in London. So this was generated using DALL-E 3, a simple prompt, a beach in London. And this is my favorite picture. I don't know why, because it just combines tropics and London. I'd like to be on that beach. So now let's have a demo. I will see if the demo will work, but I want to show you uploading an Excel document and producing charts and graphs. So we'll see. Nope, it's not going to cooperate this morning. All right, oh yeah, it's going, okay, good. And so I have a spreadsheet called visits, and it's basically places where I've visited. And so I've uploaded it to ChatGPT, and I asked it to tell me about the data. And it highlights the first few rows. So I've been to Kingston, Jamaica 20 times, Montego Bay 25 times. I've been to London 10 times, 11 if you count this trip. And what I'm showing you here is behind the scenes, ChatGPT writes Python code to analyze and process that data. And now I'm telling it to plot that data on a graph. And then it produces these really nice charts for me. And it looks accurate. So Montego Bay, most visits, Kingston, London, and then Amsterdam. And so it's really easy for you to upload data and have ChatGPT help you analyze that data, produce charts and graphs for whatever presentations you need, and also it gives you access to the code that it generates behind the scenes. You can copy and paste it and tweak it. Pretty powerful. Okay, so we're all developers in here. So playing around with ChatGPT in the UI, that's nice. But the real power comes from the OpenAI API, where you can access all of the functionality through an API. And so I do want to demo Postman calling the API. So hopefully this will work. So in this example, I am testing the images API, and that's what I use to generate the beach in London. And it doesn't look like it's working. But here, when you call the images API, there are several parameters that you pass in. You'll pass in the model name, Dolly 3. You'll pass in your prompt, and this time it's London in January. The number of images you want back, in this case, because I'm using Dolly 3, it's only going to allow me to return 1. The size, the style as vivid, the quality as HD, and the response format as a URL. So you click send in Postman, and it's going to return a response. Let's see if I can skip to that in the video. Okay, and so here is the response. It's this URL, but what I really wanted to point out is this revised prompt. So notice my prompt I sent in is very simple and short, London in January. Dolly 3 has this feature called prompt rewriting. So it takes your original prompt and it adds a lot more context and detail to produce a better image. In some cases, this works nice, and sometimes, in other cases, you want to turn it off. But right now, you can't. So let's see if I can skip to this beautiful picture of London in January. There we go. So that is a beautiful picture of London in January. Okay, and now our last demo, code optimization. So this is a really fun use case. So here we have Python code, and it also works with C#. We tested that out during the workshop, and it was very impressive. But here we have a function that calculates the average of a list of numbers. There are several optimizations that can be done to this code. So we'll take this code. Oh, let me go back. We'll take the code and upload it to ChatGPT. All right, it looks like it's working, maybe. Maybe not. Okay. And so we take the code, we go to the ChatGPT UI, we upload the code, and then we ask ChatGPT to optimize the code. It's thinking, and then it returns back first what the code is, what it's doing. So it's able to figure out what the code is supposed to do, and it lists 4 improvements. The code doesn't handle an empty list. So what happens if the list is empty? It talks about type annotations, docstring, and then here, what I really like, the efficient summation. So it's telling me, hey, did you know there's a built-in sum function that you can use? Why are you manually adding all of the values together? And, I keep doing that. And at the very end, it gives you the improved code. And so that is what I'm showing somewhere in here. But it gives you the code and you can download it. Like, how easy is that? So now let's talk about what I call more than meets the eye, or the Decepticon deception. ChatGPT is great at a lot of things, but there are limitations, ethical considerations, and risk that we all need to be aware of. In AI, bias and ethics are at the forefront. So earlier, I asked you all how many of you had been fooled by ChatGPT, and only a few hands went up. And I'm pretty sure that you've been fooled a lot, you just don't know it. There's something called hallucinations when you're dealing with large language models. And it's where the model produces a plausible sounding answer or response, and that response is 100% a lie. ChatGPT is a liar. So in my workshop on Monday and Tuesday, I posed this question to ChatGPT to demonstrate hallucinations. Can you tell me about the Kesha Airlines? Unfortunately, I do not own a fleet of Boeings. Not yet, but that's on my bucket list. But ChatGPT came back to tell us about this amazing airline, on-time performance, an up-to-date and modern fleet, delicacies offered on the airline, and it just really sounded like this airline that I would love to fly. But it was all fake. And so you have to have some knowledge of what you're asking ChatGPT and really think of it like a co-creation tool. Because, like I said, some of the answers that come back you cannot trust. And then bias and fairness, that applies to Gen AI, that applies to traditional machine learning models. And specifically with large language models, we can see where it's stereotypes, where it has language or cultural bias, and it may have more knowledge of one topic than another topic. That's also considered bias. Or it could be overly positive for one topic and overly negative for another topic. That is also a form of bias that we need to look out for. And then responsible use and misuse potential. Whenever I hear this term, I always think back to President Trump saying, fake news, fake news. And so with ChatGPT, it can produce harmful content, deep fakes, it can provide misinformation. We talked about hallucinations. OpenAI really works hard to put in a lot of guardrails to protect people, but there are often ways around those. And then the cutoff date, which is very important. So when we talked about the pre-training process, that pre-training process for a large foundation model happens at a certain point in time. And typically anything that happens after that point in time, the model is not aware of. So that's the cutoff date. ChatGPT and OpenAI, they have given us tools to potentially extend the knowledge through plugins, actions where you're able to call an API for real-time information, but there is that cutoff date. And then privacy. Don't share personal information. I'm not sure if you're aware, but any prompt that you send in, any response that you get back, OpenAI can use it to train their models. There is an option. You have to manually go in and turn off your chat history so that it is not saved on their servers and potentially used to train their models in the future. And then, of course, this is always a big hot topic when we talk about AI, just the impact on employment and overall society. I think there's going to be just the changing nature of jobs, like we talked about the developer role potentially changing, and it could eliminate other roles. Now, in our last few moments, I'd like to talk about strategies for interacting with ChatGPT effectively. and that is called prompt engineering. So a prompt is basically the query that you send in to the model, GPT-4, and you get a completion or a response back. And prompt engineering is just basically the art of crafting that query that you send in. And when I talk to people, they're often surprised at all of the nuances that can go into writing a prompt. They think it's just you're sending in a question and that's it. When you think about prompting, there are really 4 components, none of them required, they're all optional. But the first is the instruction, so the specific task that you want ChatGPT to perform. That's pretty simple. Most people do that. Context, a lot of people don't really provide the context, but you can provide context to steer the model to the output that you want. And then input data, the input question, and then the output indicator, the type or the format of output that you want. So let's look at an example. Has anyone ever written a prompt this long? Okay, brownie points for those that raised their hands. And so here in the blue, we have the instruction. So analyze and interpret the provided data. In the orange, we have the context, just basically telling ChatGPT that what it's about to do, this analysis is a part of a climate study. And then in yellow, we have the input data, where we actually upload an Excel file that contains year, region, and annual rainfall. And then we have the output indicator in green, telling it provide a detailed report, including a summary, identify anomalies, rainfall patterns, etc. And this is just an example, if you're curious, of running that prompt. So I'm uploading the data, a spreadsheet, we have the prompt, and then ChatGPT analyzes the data, tells me about the data, and then I really wanted to show you the charts and graphs. Very detailed charts and graphs, and then the code. Okay. As we wrap up, there are several prompting techniques, and I'll quickly go through these. Zero shot, that's what most people use. It's just a very simple prompt. Give me a dessert recipe. Next, there's few shot. This is where you actually give the model examples. So you say, give me a dessert recipe. Here is an example, a chocolate cake recipe. And then you have chain of thought, which is pretty powerful, where you take this complex idea and you break down the steps, the reasoning steps for the model. So give me a new dessert recipe. Here's an example of a chocolate cake recipe. First, in this chain of thought, think about the flavor profile. The second step, think about what pairs nicely with that profile, and you can just go on and on. And that really improves the output from the model. And then RAG, retrieval augmented generation. This is where you're enhancing the prompt with external data. So you can query a vector database, call an API, query a database, but you add additional information. So there are several prompting techniques. I encourage you to take your prompting game to the next level. People often combine chain of thought with few shot. All right, autobots, it is time to roll out.
Roll out.
Let's talk about the future and what comes next. The landscape of AI is changing at a very rapid rate. I've been in tech for 29 years, and I have never seen technology change so quickly. It's really important to stay up to speed on what's happening. So when we think about the future, I do see a continued integration in our everyday lives with AI, Gen AI, and just think about AI assistants that manage your schedule, your health, homes and offices becoming smarter and cities becoming smarter, just this continued integration in our day-to-day lives. Now, the future forms of AI, when I think about what happens next, they will be better at learning using fewer examples, better at adapting to new tasks, and even AI that collaborates with AI. And that sounds really scary, but it's coming. We'll see a huge push on ethics and governance. Right now, individual countries are making mandates around AI and how it can be used and what it needs to share around transparency. I do see us coming together and having global standards and regulations and citizens demanding more transparency. I see entire industries being transformed by AI. Think about drug discovery and even space exploration, and new job categories will emerge. Just a few years ago, prompt engineering didn't even exist. And so I'm just super excited about what is coming next. And then definitely more enhanced creativity, personalization, co-creating with AI. So artists, designers, just that co-creation. So when you think about continuing your learning journey, everyone in AI should be seeing ways to upskill in AI and trying to find ways on how it can make you more productive. This reminds me of when the cloud was released. We had people that were totally against the cloud, didn't see the value, and now look at where we are. AI, and specifically Gen AI, it's the same way. There are a lot of people that are afraid of it, concerned around ethics, don't really see how they can use it, but fast forward, like Gen AI is what the cloud is. So if you want to start your learning, you can start with taking my course on LinkedIn Learning, Artificial Intelligence Foundations, Machine Learning. If you want free access, just message me on LinkedIn and I'll send you a free link. And that talks mainly about just the more traditional, foundational machine learning and AI concepts. It's a great starting point before you move to Gen AI. And then next, you can take my course, Building a Project with the ChatGPT API. Again, reach out to me on LinkedIn for a free link. And then if you want to learn more about prompt engineering and using it to improve the performance and output of your models, check out my course on Pluralsight. Again, message me and I'll send you a free link. So I really hope that you all continue your learning journey in AI. And then I'm really excited about this Cloud Career Journeys book. This is a book that highlights 16 professionals in tech, and it tells about their journeys. And some have non-traditional journeys, but it's all about their journey to the cloud. And my story is actually featured, and I have 2 books to give away, first come, first serve. Hopefully when you read this, you will be inspired, and I just want to give a shout out to the authors. Prasad, are you in here? If you are, raise your hand. Ashish, if you're here. Back there, shout out to the authors of this book. It is a guidebook, and it's a great way to help people learn how to navigate the cloud. And you can also get it on Amazon. So first come, first serve. And now, in our last few minutes, does anyone have any questions? The first question gets the last transformer. Yes.
So had ChatGPT been around when notable astronomers and physics type people from years past who were ultimately ostracized or even killed because of what they were teaching, had ChatGPT been around back then, would it have confirmed that these people were teaching falsehoods?
Oh, that is a very good question.
Because what would have had to be trained on, right?
So you're talking about like Albert Einstein, like back in the day.
We're going back.
How far back?
Let's say several hundred years.
Okay. So what would the data have been?
Let's say the solar system revolves around the sun.
Right.
That was a thought that got people in big trouble back in the day.
Right, and the Earth is flat, or
Right,
is it?
Earth is flat,
Is
right.
it round?
Had ChatGPT been around back then, would it have supported the people that said that's a falsehood?
It really depends on the data. What does the data say? So I guess I would assume the majority of the people, if we're going way back, they all believe the Earth was flat. And so then ChatGPT would, if that's the data, it would agree with the Earth is flat. Why are people laughing? Isn't the Earth round? Okay, I don't understand why people are laughing. That's a very thought-provoking question. And here's your transformer.
It's not discovering new truth, right? It's confirming.
No, right.
Whatever it's
Not
trained on.
not yet. It's not sentient yet, so no. Yes. And you may have to come to the mic.
Hi, everyone. How do you control the content that the machine is learning from? How do you distinguish the malicious content from the good content?
Do you mean that the outputs coming back, like the hallucinations that I talked about, or?
Not really, the content that you input to the machine to learn, to create the model.
Right. So when I think about the fine-tuning process for ChatGPT, there was and still is this human element that really controls what is being fed to the machine. So for example, the conversations and those examples, I'm pretty sure that it did not include, like, they tried to remove any bias, any hate speech, and things of that nature. But as the trainer, it's very important for us to do our best to make sure our data doesn't have bias in it or things that could produce hateful content. But then on the flip side of that, OpenAI, they do have guardrails in what you can send and then what comes back. And so if you try to do anything like inappropriate hate speech, it will not generate or allow you to even send that prompt to the model. So there are guardrails in that way as well. Hi.
In a similar vein, you mentioned before that there was a cutoff date.
I mentioned what?
That there was a cutoff date
Oh, right.
on the learning data.
Right.
So now that it's been released, if you were to do a new model, how would you prevent all the new hallucinations that already are online from getting back into the models?
Yeah, it's a pretty hard process, but with OpenAI, they seem to be very, I guess, cognizant of the issues that could happen, but still, hallucinations happen. Like right now, there's not really a good way to prevent hallucinations. However, there are tools on the market that help you sort of identify hallucinations. And I think there will be, more tools it's a great space, more tools of that nature to help people verify.
I wasn't thinking too much about the output hallucinations. I was thinking of the feedback loop of hallucinations polluting the online space and then the new online space being used to train the new models on.
Yes, that is a possibility, just like with Kesha Airlines, that doesn't exist. Like if somebody writes a nice blog post like, you should fly this airline, like you said, it's going back into the space and it's misinformation. And yeah, That's a tangled web of problems.
Hi there.
Hi.
One of the human responses to a question or query could be, I don't know, or I'm not sure about. Can ChatGPT give you that response? Or are you
Yes.
always going to try to come up with
Yes.
something?
I've definitely seen that response. I want to walk and get these books. I've definitely seen a response where ChatGPT tells me that it cannot answer my question, and it's very frustrating. Okay, I have 2 cloud career journey books. Who would like one? It's great. See how easy that is? There you go. Thank you. Very easy. Ask and you shall receive. Okay. Thank you.